Hello to you there and welcome to yet another episode of Sport Views, a production of the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago in collaboration with TTT Limited. We're coming to you from the wonderful ambience, the backdrop of the National Aquatic Centre, Couva, Trinidad and Tobago. Today we're discussing everything sport as always, but today we're really pinpointing the Director of Physical Education and the Sports Division, Mr. Gabre, McTair. Mr. McTair, thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me.
It's nice to have this discussion because there are many misconceptions that I think we can take this opportunity to clear up. Your division as the Director of Physical Education and Sports, tell us a bit about some of those misconceptions, because when the general public hears physical education, they think only primary school or secondary school.
Right. Well, first and foremost, the remit for physical education is under the Ministry of Education, right? Long ago, when I say long ago, probably up until the mid-90s, there would have been physical education under the remit of the Ministry of Education when it had some linkage to the education departments. However, since then, the curriculum division has taken up the role of dealing with all things physical education under the Ministry of Education. So the name stuck and it has never been changed. However, the Ministry of Sport and Community Development and the Physical Education and Sport Division does not have any sort of real authority as it pertains to the development or the implementation of physical education in schools, and also, which could also extend to universities actually. Now, you mentioned physical education being thought of as only in schools. Mainly it is. Right, mainly it is. Physical education is the foundation of sport development. Now it's more termed as physical literacy, which means that it kind of takes it out of the school system and puts it anywhere that you can actually have the development and the implementation of programs for children, teenagers, young adults to understand themselves physically. Right, so that has been the term utilized more now, physical literacy within the realm of long-term athlete development. However, whether it's physical literacy or physical education, the catchment is always better at schools because you have youngsters going to school on a daily basis, and it's an easy area where the focus could be placed on their physical development, which would help lead to sport development at some point.
With that being said, how do you motivate your staff to keep it best presented to the public? Because as you mentioned, persons have various differences, and we know this as a fact. But how do you keep this to the public?
We understand the nature of it, and I think that's the main thing. We understand where it comes from, where the confusion can lie, and if there's anything at all where we need to liaise with the physical education unit under the curriculum division of Ministry of Education, we do so. We have very good relationships with them. We have had a number of meetings even during this COVID period here, between last year and this year, in terms of discussing certain matters when it is the ability for physical education to take place in schools and sport to take place in schools starts back, hopefully sooner than later. But the relationship between both ministries and both divisions is excellent. So if it is a case where there's something that comes to us that will be under the remit of the Ministry of Education, we simply make contact, pass it on, and ensure that whatever matters need to be taken care of are managed.
You made mention of the pandemic, and is it something that you've seen opportunities for the improvement on how business is done through the division? Yeah,
definitely. The sports system in and of itself, or the sports sector in and of itself, can do with some revamping in a number of ways. There has been a lot of collaborative discussion going on so far between the ministry, sports company, the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, the main universities being UTT and UE, as it relates to how it is we can improve the delivery of sport to our citizens. And we have also even collaborated on a couple programs last financial year, financial year being October 2020 to September 2021, we would have collaborated on some programs related to the delivery of capacity building courses, with respect to the delivery of aspects of knowledge that would focus more on women and girls' participation in sport and empowering them through sports, through the Pink Rain campaign, which is one of our major flagship programs. So yeah, definitely what we have been able to do so far is take a look inward, not just at the ministry alone, but in the sports sector in general, and be able to try to put some things in place. There's much larger elements that are required to, for example, the Sports Commission and the establishment of the National Sports Commission. I think that would make a major or create major improvements in how sport is operated and administered in Trinidad and Tobago. We have already started discussions on that, and we have made some headway. So we hope that in 2022 that it leads to a much further progress, in the establishment of that institution. That I think would help in terms of defining the roles and responsibilities of the various institutions in sport and in the sports sector. Within the ministry, we have seen it necessary to go back to the communities, especially since we are now sport and community development. It really helps in terms of bringing together that focus on the development of sport in communities. We have started that with capacity building courses, as I mentioned before. We did that in collaboration with the TTOC and with the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and also with the Tobago House of Assembly. So again, we see things and we try our best where we can within the resources that are available to be able to ensure that we can give the best possible service to communities, to elite athletes as well. We're actually looking over the policy as it stands, as well as the processes involved in terms of making it easier for athletes to be able to apply for assistance, whether it be elite athlete assistance or grant funding assistance.
You made mention of some of the programs, including one of the flagship programs and other programs that you go into the communities. Are there any other programs that must make a notable mention?
Well, the Pink Rain campaign, I'll just mention that because that creates a very strong focus for the development of women in sport, and that comes from the international focus that women and girls in sport has been given via the IOC, via the United Nations, to the Sustainable Development Goals. So that is a major focus to us, and of course we have a woman Minister of Sport and Community Development. So for her, that is extremely important in terms of giving women the opportunity to be able to participate and empower themselves through sport and physical activity. And that comes with several components. The main components would be, well, at least for this year coming, we will do some life skills workshops in terms of the development of the careers for women and girls in sport. We will look at the Girls Run TT Challenge again, which is a virtual race where women were challenged, well, last year at least, women were challenged to run 70 miles, okay, well, run or walk 70 miles. And it was very interesting how in the midst of the lockdown, people still found the opportunity and the time to run and to engage in the challenge, either around their houses, take a chance in the streets, buy a treadmill. So it worked very, very well in that regard. Also to what we're looking to do this year, we're looking to, well, hopefully, if it is we are allowed to have in-person interaction where sport is concerned in communities, we want to carry sports to the community. Certain sports that really have not received the sort of awareness in communities, for example, cheerleading. Right, cheer is now in the Olympics, right? As of this year, and the Trinidad and Tobago Cheer Federation has been doing very good work over a number of years in schools. We want to try to get that out to the communities now. Let them get to feel it, get to see what it is like, get excited by it, and hopefully in a few years we may have a cheerleading team going to the Olympics.
That's interesting because growing up and looking at cable networks and thing, I'm sure many persons would have seen the movie
course.
Bring It On,
Yes.
All or Nothing.
Yes.
And that was strictly based on young ladies and young people dominating their field in various categories and going to the national trials, Olympics and
Right.
everything as it pertains to that. Is it a direction you think that Trinidad can eventually reach? Because naturally we're a vibesy people. We're full of vibe.
That's the thing. The first time I interacted with the Cheer Federation and they went to the events, it was just a natural fit. We love to dance.
Oh yes, we do.
Right? We love to dance. We have natural talent for whether it might be aerobic activity or whether it may be gymnastics type activity. And I think when you bring music, you bring dance together and you put it in a sport scenario, boom, there we have cheerleading. And I think we have done fairly well so far within the development of the sport. I have seen the Cheer Federation go from having their national championships in a school to actually having to have it at the stadium at a point in time because it was so large, right? They had it at the National Cycle Velodrome at a point in time as well to be able to accommodate the number of teams and spectators and so. So ultimately, the scope for the development of the sport and the excitement that it brings, not just for ladies, not just for young ladies and girls, but also boys and young men are part of it because you need for the platform element of aspects of the stunts and so you need boys or young men to be able to provide that support. So there are a number of young men, young boys who are part of it, and we definitely see where a sport like that can develop. Just to continue a little bit, not to ensure that I don't leave out another key program or two. The Shape in Communities program is another program that we launched last year. And it's a program that we are looking to definitely bring on again this fiscal year coming or within this fiscal year. So that particular program looks more at the development of sport in communities. What we have been able to do last year and we will do again this year is through the TTOC, we are going to have a capacity building workshop for coaches, especially for coaches who either have no certification in sport or who are now starting their career in coaching. We're also looking at the introduction of a course or introductory course for sport administrators because we understand that we need to have a much stronger presence, a much stronger structural presence in communities as it relates to sports clubs and sports serving bodies. And eventually now link those sports clubs and sports serving bodies to the national governing bodies, which helps in bringing about that sort of progressive development of sport from community to national level. We're also looking at, apart from everything else, a community sport tournament, again, if it is we are allowed to have in-person activity, and that is going to really just help to bring people back to playing. We realize that with the pandemic, with the lockdowns, with no sport in schools, we have lost that. We have lost that, or we can lose and have that level of attrition in the amount of sport that is played by youngsters and by people in general. So we want to bring that back to a community sport tournament.
Which leads to my next question. How do you see sporting interactions evolving or continuing into the pandemic? Because we all know it's nothing new that I wish it can come to an end. We all do.
We all do, definitely.
But I really don't see it happening in the very near future.
Yeah, it is going to be. It's unpredictable, and that's the frightening thing about this whole COVID pandemic. It's very unpredictable. I mean, we thought. Not by the end of 2020 we should be back to some level of normalcy. We thought at least we would be able to have some element of sport played in the communities in 2021. I mean, we thought we'd have carnival in 2021, some people, right? But at the end of the day, back to sport, we are really hoping that we can engage in some level of in-person activity, which is one of the reasons why we have been pushing and promoting the vaccination campaign of the Ministry of Health and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, because the more people we can get vaccinated, the more people we can have, we can control the levels, which would help to allow for some in-person participation in sport eventually. We have had many conversations with our national governing bodies for sport, and we hope that extends to their athletes and their clubs and so, to really encourage people to get vaccinated. And I think that would help in terms of bringing back some element of normalcy. But at least in the interim, sport has been continuing at national level. We have had national teams engaging in their training, as would have been allowed by the Ministry of Health and the Prime Minister a few months back. We have had national athletes participating in international competition as well too, and we have some international tournaments coming up, including the Commonwealth Games, including the World Netball Championships next year, where our national teams are training, the Special Olympics World Games as well. We do have a Special Olympics team that is in training at this particular point in time towards participation in those games. So at national level, yes, we try to continue as best as we can. As it gets into community and school level, and so I guess that will depend best on the level of vaccination and the reduction of the numbers eventually, which unfortunately have started to skyrocket again.
Get vaccinated, guys. We need to return to some sort of sport. The director will tell you all about that as it pertains to sport and education and sporting education, everything else in between. Yeah. Director, what changes would you like to see sport returning to some sort of normalcy, and apart from being normal, to encourage more participation and then encourage healthier living?
I think there's a mindset. I think there's a mindset that needs to be developed where sport is concerned in Trinidad and Tobago. I think in many respects we see sport as entertainment, right? I still don't think, and this is my personal view, I still don't think that we as a citizenry respect sport for what it is and what it can do, not just for the career of individuals, but also for national development. I think it's coming around a bit, yeah? I think it's coming around, but I think there's a lot to do in terms of re-engineering the cultural mindset as it relates to sport and sport participation. Still, it's seen as recreation and entertainment. The science in sport is not really well understood, and you'll have that conversation with Tobias Otley soon in terms of sports science and how important that is to sport development and also just human development, period. Because for me, as a personal trainer on the side, I still try to engage in that aspect of my life. You understand how well introducing the sciences to physical training helps in terms of better enabling the individual to meet their goals safely, right? And sustainably as well too. Good. So ultimately, I think that there needs to be a much better appreciation for sport. There needs to be a much better understanding as to where sport can take individuals and the country as it relates to economic prosperity, as it relates to allowing the country to be able to be a lot more healthy, right? And ultimately, just well-being. I mean, we see where a lot of the issues related to, or should I say, we see where a lot of the persons who tend to suffer most from COVID-19 are persons with comorbidities, right? In a healthy society, you limit the number of persons who either are in ICU or who die from COVID if it is sport and physical activity is engaged in more, and proper diet and everything that comes with it. Because it's not just sport and physical activity. You have to take all the other components into it if it is you truly want to be healthy. So I think that as we go along, I'm hoping that COVID teaches us a lesson as it relates to the need to reduce our obesity levels, the need to ensure that we eat properly, the need to ensure that we exercise regularly. You don't need to be an athlete. We're not talking about people having to be athletes here. We're talking about people
general
engaging in general fitness, health and well-being, which would lead to long life and and a much better quality of life as you go along.
Oh yeah. You mentioned you're a physical trainer, personal trainer as well on this side, and that answers my question about your bulging biceps. It really it's really very much profound. But how does that life tie in to this one as a director?
I mean, it has its connections. It has its connections, and it's also separate and apart. But the knowledge that you gain in sport in your career as you go along, in your academic career as you go along, helps in terms of guiding how it is you're able to engage your clients, right? In engaging your clients, you get to understand sometimes what is the word on the ground out there as it relates to sport, as it relates to physical wellness, and you're now able to bring that to bear in how it is you look at policy and how you look at implementing policy and that kind of stuff. How it is you put together programs as well too. In listening to clients, you tend to find out from what people think, where people think deficiencies are, in terms of what the population needs. So it does have its nexus. For me, maintaining the personal training and what I do in terms of at least just my exercise and fitness is really just a means of distressing in many cases. It's a means of just doing something different, taking my head out of the office and putting it into something that I enjoy, just differentiating my focus a bit in helping other people to develop their own fitness goals, and by extension helping myself in terms of being able to try to be around this earth for as long as possible.
And is it part of the fact that you have to burn out the doubles that you had a couple of days ago?
Nah, the doubles, boy. You see, if it is you have another carnival, then yes. Definitely I'll have to admit to eating doubles. But no, normally I try to maintain a healthy diet. I try to maintain as best as I possibly can good eating habits. I mean, sometimes with work, you end up eating lunch 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Unfortunately.
One or two times much later, and I won't mention those times. But at the end of the day, it's about bringing balance, and that's what it's about. It's about trying to find that work personal life balance, and doing as best as you possibly can to achieve it.
Looking at the national, or I should say the international scale, in which sport has evolved tremendously and continues to evolve and continues to be a multi-billion-dollar industry, do you think Trinidad can create its own safe space and, of course, make it profitable for nation building?
Of course. We are here at the National Aquatic Center. The National Aquatic Center is one of the best aquatic facilities in the region. When I say region, I don't just mean the Caribbean region, I mean in North Central South America, right? We do have the National Cycle Velodrome, another one of the best and high quality facilities in the region. The possibility is definitely there for us to be able to monetize and maximize on the commercialization of these facilities, or the sport tourism prospects of these facilities, and how we are now able to use that towards economic development and economic prosperity as a nation. It also helps in terms of our sport development capacity, because if it is we are able to bring in international teams, international coaches, international capacity, teach our national and local capacity here, and give our local athletes those very vivid and even tangible, you can actually see them, touch them, you know that they exist, you see them train in your own backyard. It gives them that motivation to continue to do what they do a lot better. So I think definitely the maximizations of the resources that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, our climate, I mean, as we find it, a little bit hot, and
I find it quite hot because I'm seeing the sweat dripping.
Yeah, there are a few beads of sweat that are
brows.
dripping down, and so. But for persons in winter time, this is excellent. This is the weather that they want. This is what they desire. So, in being able to have teams come and train here at the various facilities that we have, it definitely assists in being able to ensure that we can develop our sport development capacity as well as our economic development capacity. the sports company of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the ministry has been collaborating with them in this regard, has been doing an excellent job, I think, in trying to create alliances and create partnerships with a number of international clubs, federations, organizations, universities, and international bodies as it relates to the usage and the maximization of the utilization of these facilities, not just for locals but also for international practitioners. So I don't want to get too deep into it too soon, but definitely there are plans that are in the works for the aquatic center, for the National Cycle Velodrome, for the National Tennis Center. The National Hockey Center is being refurbished, right, in terms of its turf, and we look forward to hosting international competitions again there. So definitely there's a lot under the cover
but
that is being taken care of.
I really can't help myself, because we have this exclusive with you, and I really would like to know, of course, without letting the cat out of the bag too much, what are some of the plans that you and the entire team have for the year 2022?
We look to continue along with the development of capacity. I think for us that's very, very important, both sports company and the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. We're looking at the development of capacity. We're looking at the digitization of as many of the processes that we can in applying for sports grants or in accessing sports services through the Ministry of Sport and Community Development as well as sports company. We're looking at collaborating a lot more. As I said, 2020 I think was a very good year for collaborating among various arms of the sports sector, various key arms of the sports sector. The National Policy on Sport speaks to that extensively, and we are trying our best to be able to really pull that together. We are looking at, as a ministry, bringing sport for development much more into the focus as it relates to the services that we provide and the development of the policy, the national sport policy, as I mentioned previously. We actually have a community development partnership forum that is coming up in January. If I have my dates correct, I think it'll be between January 24th and 26th, whereby what we want to do is to engage local as well as regional sport for development practitioners, and to get people to understand the power that sport has in community development, which is why the marriage that exists between sport and community development as one ministry is perfect. It's a perfect, no disrespect to Youth Affairs, who we have partnered with for a number of years, but I think that where community development is concerned, there is that excellent ability to now bounce ideas and projects off of each other that will mutually benefit each other's mandates. So those are just some of the elements. I mean, of course, you have all of the administrative stuff that we need to do as well. We need to continue to support our national governing bodies. We need to continue to support sports clubs and sports serving bodies as well. And of course, there's always going to be funding, which is always a major part of what we do in terms of trying to find funding where we can. In this very, very, very difficult time economically, but trying to find funding where we can so that our athletes are able to go out there and represent Trinidad and Tobago well.
Director McTair, we just have a couple minutes remaining, and right. I saw the passion in your eyes when you spoke about healthy living and having persons exercising and everything else as it pertains to health and, of course, physical education and physical fitness. Here's an opportunity for you now. Encourage the persons viewing on to get involved in sport. How can they do that? How can you encourage or give advice to someone wanting to get involved in sport?
I think, again, it starts with our mindset. It starts with taking into consideration life and what life means. We can live life in a number of ways. One of the ways in which it is we can live life is having a quality of life that allows you to be able to live in the best possible way. A lot of the times we get caught up with making money and our careers and whatnot, but part of it has to be that balance of making sure that your life and the way in which it is you are able to just live day to day, run upstairs, sit without having to ache, without having to press down on a chair, stand same way. Those are just simple things that we tend to take for granted that sport and physical education helps to develop, or physical activity helps to develop. So again, it's not meaning that you have to become an athlete. It's meaning that you're taking your life into consideration, and the fact that everybody wants to live. It is the nature of human beings to live. So live in the best way that you possibly can. How to start? If it is we're talking about children in schools, then find out from the school administration who is the physical education teacher. If it is physical education is not taught in your school, find out how best you can have physical education started at your school. Find out where you can have or how you can have a sport program commenced at your school. There are a number of coaches that exist. There are the national governing bodies as well that are always willing to assist in the development of sport programs in the school system. So it's a matter of doing some level of research. It could be reaching out to the ministry, it could be reaching out to the Ministry of Education through their physical education unit, and finding out how best you can start those programs in your school. Within communities, there are always individuals or clubs and structured organizations for coaching programs. Again, find out either through the national governing body, through the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, who some of these clubs are, right? Where and how it is you can now access the services that they provide. Good. And if it is you are now an adult or even in your mature years, understanding where you can find a gym space that is comfortable and it fits your needs, and being able to engage in the necessary training that is required for you to be at your best. And even if it is you don't want to go to a gym, we have quite a number of recreation grounds around Trinidad and Tobago. Utilize them. Walk. The 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week of moderate to high intensity walking is beneficial to health. That is scientifically proven.
Very profound
So
advice.
all it means is that you just need to start to walk. It's as simple as that.
Just get started.
Just get started, right? You don't need equipment, just get started. On the other hand, we are in a social media age. YouTube offers a plethora.
The University of YouTube.
The University of YouTube, the institution of YouTube, that provides so many different types of training programs for beginners, for advanced, things you can do at home, things you can do with very minimal equipment, things you can do with adaptive equipment that exists. So it's just really to start. It's to have the mindset of, I need to do this for me, and to start the process of doing so.
Director, unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to thank you very much for joining me today.
Sure.
Well, that's where we put a wrap on today's episode of Sport Views, a production of the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago in collaboration with TTT Limited. We were chatting with the Director of Physical Education and the Sports Division, Mr. Gabre McTair. And of course, we have more for you coming up in the very next few days. I'm Sachin Ramsabag. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.